My older brothers played Dungeons and Dragons, and it was repeating the same adventure over and over because I still kind of thought of D&D as a board game.
I was first introduced to Dungeons and Dragons actually through a theater gig. My first professional gig outside of undergrad. So, right after graduation, I spent a summer in Ohio working on an outdoor drama.
My brother was big into it as a young teenager, and he was deep into it. He would go to like 3-day games, and I was always tangentially interested, but I didn't really get into it until about my 20s. And he introduced me to it. He was just like, "Come over and I'll teach you the game."
I'm not going to put any names in here, but the guy who invited me was the dungeon master. And he was like, okay, let's play this just because it was what he had and he knew how to run it. I don't even know what adventure we played. I never asked him. But it was an interesting experience. It was my first time maneuvering around in a simulated space like that. It was interesting to just learn how to do that.
I played a blonde elf ranger, which was very like playing to the type of who I thought I was at the time. And she was an absolute dingus. Not by choice, but just because I rolled really bad a lot.
As far as D&D goes, I've been a forever DM for coming up on 29 years.
My first game was just a very traditional D&D game, and I don't even remember what the campaign was. It was like a one-shot, but it was really cool to me because I didn't understand what D&D was, so I was very one of those wild card players, and I was like, I want my weapon to be a towel, because I was into the Hitchhiker's Guide to... Yeah, I get it. But, like, there was a cool moment where like I turned my towel into a I think it's called a bolus with the two balls on the end and you throw it, and we were fighting an infernal and it rolled a critical miss and it poked itself in the eye for enough damage to kill it, and I was like, this is much yes, I want to do more of this.
I went to a Baptist college, and so I had like all of these like expectations and religious stuff weighing on me. And so like by the end of college and as I was moving into the professional world, I was starting to figure out my own gender, but I hadn't made the switch to they them pronouns at that time.
Thinking about it and what have you around late 2002, but I didn't tell anyone until I was in therapy for it in 2003.
I didn't figure out I was trans until I was 34. But I've always had some really feelings about just being a mono-identified female. And I remember it because the way I started my character was I spent all of my gold on one weapon. It was a repeating crossbow. And I was like, so I don't have anything, right? And I'm basically naked. And they were like, yeah, you're basically naked. And in my mind, that meant I had regular clothes on. But apparently, in the minds of the other men at the table, I was naked. And that didn't seep down into my brain at first because, I gotta be honest, I think that was like my first non-binary character. Because I didn't think of that character as female. I didn't think of that character as having a gender at all. Until the other guys at the table started, like, getting creepy about it. And, like, I remember, because, there's that pressure to fit in and, like, be part of the group, I kind of turned it into a joke to where I was like, and I run and hide behind the barrels, and I hide behind my crossbow, and stuff like that so I could hide my body. But, like, I remember it being really odd to me that they thought of me as having a female body because in my mind, I didn't have a gender. At that time, I was really bad at making the character sheets, so I didn't even put a name on it. And I would just, like, we popped off with, like, my mother named me Captain because she had high hopes for me. And it was, like, the first time I thought about, like, I didn't really think about it, but it was the first time those wheels in the back of your head started turning. And I was like, I didn't really want to be a woman. I didn't really want to be a man, but I didn't want to be a woman either.
My mid-20s, I slowly started to meet non-binary people and learn this feeling I have is something that others do have. Actually, there is somebody who does a Dungeons and Dragons podcast that I've talked to before. Is also non-binary.
I feel like it's kind of just been a process because I don't think I ever at any point was like, this is my coming out post or party or whatever. I just kind of gradually started being more open about it. And that definitely reflected my own like process of existing as a queer and trans person and as I was figuring all that out. Because it was during my last year of college that I started to think maybe all of these feelings and like the ways that I played as a child before I went through puberty and all of that kind of stuff started to like I was putting the pieces together of who I had always been.
I always kind of knew that I was a queer kid. Always kind of knew. Like, Xena was big when I was really young, and I was really into Xena and Gabrielle. And Gabrielle got a boyfriend, Joxer, I believe his name was, and I freaking hated Joxer so much because I wanted him to go away so Xena and Gabriella could get together. I didn't really understand that, though, because there was no exposure. I grew up in a hyper-religious household. We weren't allowed to watch a lot of programs. Like, everything had to be run through the church, basically. And I didn't know what that was. The first time I remember someone telling me what a gay person was, I was talking to a friend of mine in middle school. And she was talking about how she was reading this book and there was this girl in it and she liked breasts, but she wasn't gay. And I was like, what's that? What's gay? What's a lesbian? And when she said it, the words literally came out of my mouth. Oh, that's me.
I was going through all this stuff in my head. I was getting haircuts, but I wasn't expressing really any of this stuff to my fellow students because I didn't feel like I could. I witnessed some, just really horrifying both transphobia and inability to effectively handle someone with a mental illness. Seeing that happen to another student made me feel like I never would have been fully safe or accepted.
I had an all-male friend group, and, like, I adopted he/him pronouns and adopted a male name because I was like, isn't it weird that I'm the only girl that hangs out with y'all? You shouldn't call me a girl name because that's weird. Call me a guy name. And that kind of simmered in the background for more than a decade. And then it was very much a light bulb moment. Because there's this narrative that trans people are only trans if they have dysphoria. Can you as a cis person tell me what dysphoria is? I bet you can't. I didn't know what it was either. Now, I know that I experienced a lot of dysphoria now looking back, but I didn't understand it then. I thought it was normal body issues, normal image issues. And I read this tweet, and I can almost remember the exact words. You don't have to have dysphoria to be trans. You may just want to update your pronouns. And I literally tweeted, no, because that's me. And like 3 trans women jumped into my mentions and was like, if you need to talk about this, if you need help, you can talk to me. And I still follow those women online. Like, we don't really talk, but I followed them and I still do. Because they were like, they got into my mentions and they were like, do you want to talk? Do you, like, my DMs are open. And I was like, I don't think I'm trans though. Because like, X reason, Y reason, I don't remember all of the things. And then it wasn't a month later, I was making my first appointment to a gender therapist.
I was just so interested in making different characters. And getting a little bit into the part about my non binary status, I noticed I did not make characters that were typically my status, what I was assigned at birth. I never thought anything of it at the time. I just thought, oh, I like making different characters. But looking back, it's started to make me, I can see where that started. I do remember that I probably wanted to play a character that was not my assigned gender, but I didn't because I felt like that might be considered weird to people I did not know very well.
I really believe that I still exist today as a person, both in a self-actualized sense and in a literal sense, because of my ability to access gaming communities.
My experience in game stores, I never am completely comfortable. I never feel like I completely fit in. And part of that is because I don't always go there to game. Sometimes I'm just shopping, sometimes I'm just hanging out. But I do feel really conspicuous, especially in Warhammer stores specifically, because Warhammer is an extremely male dominated game. And there are a lot of people who play Warhammer that I have absolutely zero in common with.
Being trans in this space is wondrous and lovely and affirming. Being trans in the real world is terrifying. Where I live, I get slurs screamed at me from those big double dually trucks all the time. People just scream stuff at me. Whatever. Yep, moving on. I get my tires slashed like every 6 months or so, or a window smashed because I'm like the only visibly trans person in the town. It water off a duck's back. But if I went to a space where I was like, I want to fit in here and I want to be included and I want to have fun, if I were to butt up against that phobia, that hate, it would really affect my experience. It would really, like, I'd never want to go again. I don't care if your shop is LGBTQ plus run and operated. I wouldn't want to go.
If I'm very honest about it, and maybe this is because I'm super old, but it doesn't bother me that much the way things have been done. I don't have a hard time getting inside the head of the world and viewing things within the context of the world. If trans bodies in the world of Cyberpunk 2077 are being fetishized because it's a widespread transhumanist culture now, then like I can accept that as like a feature of the world rather than a sin of the developers. I've honestly much stronger feelings about the representation of like butch women in media and games and things, where a lot of people still kind of think that like a strong female character is super feminine, but like she can kick ass and not break a nail. Buffy the Vampire Slayer type characters, where I'm like, that's great, but when are we gonna get some like really like masculine, like real masculine women who have the experience of being called sir by people who don't know them well, who wear men's clothing, who are who are butch. Like, I'd love to see that. I care more about that than anything these days.
I think something for me that's been like weird but also fun is going into like video game character makers and making whatever character I feel like. My favorite character I've created in that way is a Monster Hunter World character. Because I started with a female base, which is what I usually do because that's what my body looks like. So it's like an easier base for me to build off of. And then I discovered that the facial hair option was not grayed out in the character builder. I was like, I can make a trans boy. And so I did. And he's just so much fun to play because he has all of these like effeminate mannerisms, but he looks like a dude. And that resonates for me because like even at the most masculine I get, I am an extremely effeminate man. I'm also a dancer, like. So having a character that looked and moved like me was just so much fun.
Literally the only representation that I know of any trans character was Krim from Dragon Age 3. Okay, so there is a trans man in Dragon Age 3. And the weird thing about this character is that it is such good representation until a certain scene. And in this scene, you go and you talk to the Iron Bull's crew, and he is the Iron Bull's first lieutenant, basically. And there's this... It's so jarring. So binding is people with breasts. They use some kind of compression garment underneath their shirt to flatten their chest and give them a more masculine look. There are very improper ways to do it, and there are proper ways to do it. This character mentions that he binds, and he's making a joke to the Iron Bull about how the Iron Bull has big pecs, and he's like making a joke about how he should bind to smash his pillowy man bosoms or something. And then it gives you this conversation wheel, and all of the questions on it, there is only one option to just like gloss over it and just not ignore it completely, and the rest of them are really odd questions, like, I didn't realize you were a woman, how long have you known you're not a woman, stuff like that. Very intrusive kind of questions. And like, I get it, because at that point I didn't understand Krim was trans, and this game came out right before I figured out I was trans, so it wasn't something I was looking for. I kind of understand why it was there, but also it was really bad because it's incredibly jarring, intrusive kind of questions, or the one question to literally ignore it and move on to the next dialogue option. I don't know of any trans representation in tabletop RPGs, and I know of zero human non-binary characters in any kind of gaming.
I think what's most important is to have representation. Icewind Dale, which is the newest D&D book that has come out, and I'm actually running that one right now. And at one point an NPC shows up, and he's like asking the characters to go and look for his lost husband. And I was like, oh my god, there's a gay guy right here in black and white in this text. And I love that, and I want more. I think it's great that the world of D&D has the flexibility for you to be whatever gender or gender identity or gender expression that you want to be. But a lot of it takes place in our heads. And not every DM is creating their own modules or their own NPCs. Some people are sticking to what's in the text. So I think having that representation integrated into the text, using different pronouns, having different gender identities, sexual identities, all of that I think is really important in making the space inclusive and making people feel welcome.
It's gotta, for me, it's personally kind of gotta ride that line between, we are not trying to show you that this person is trans, but we want you to know this person is trans. I don't quite know how that would be done in a way that a cis-het person would understand it, but like, I can see, like I said, the rest of Krim was really well done, because there are very small, like, almost Easter eggs of, so there's a moment where there is a character named Cole, and Cole is a spirit, and Cole can read memories and such, and he is going through one of Iron Bull's memories, and this was the first encounter of Iron Bull and Krim, and he is speaking as Bull, and Bull had his eye chopped because there was this group of people harassing Krim, and so he's going through, oh, my eye, I can't see out of it, ignore that, and he goes down to help Krim, who has been injured, and he's like, gotta get this breastplate off. And there's this moment where Bull literally says in his mind, oh, so what do you want me to call you? He doesn't like, oh, this is actually a woman. He's like, oh, okay, I see. What do you want me to call you? And for me, that was one of the best moments of saying this character is trans without saying this character is trans, like with a big neon sign. And I really liked that, because it wasn't a character stating I am trans. It wasn't a character stating that person is trans. It was a trans experience. It was an experience that these two people shared that came about because that character was trans.
From the very beginning, laying the groundwork of pronouns is really important. I think it's important to have the distinction, like we were talking earlier, between the character's gender and the player's gender. And for everyone to be really specific about who they're talking to and who they're talking about. Am I talking about you as a player, or am I talking about your character? And that influences the pronouns that you're using.
You should include non-binary characters that are just from the regular or what you would consider typical society. So you just, even saying default human. Definitely question your presumptions about magical creatures, especially in my experience doing, a little home writing, shapeshifters, because why would a shapeshifter necessarily have the same ideas of gender, especially when they can change sex?
Most non-binary people are not androgynous. Don't try to make them the most non-gendered person you've ever seen. There are very masculine non-binary people. There are very feminine non-binary people. It is an internal experience. It is who they are inside, not what you see. Never say you want to put a trans character or a non-binary character in your setting. You cannot crack a door and not expect the wind to blow it open. If you have one, you have 10,000. If you have one trans character, you have 10,000. You would never say, I want an orc in my campaign. Because that orc has a people, it has experiences, it has a culture. If you're going to put a trans character in your game, you have a population by default of trans characters, and you need to think about that. They don't all have to be from the same culture. They don't all have to have the same experience, but you have an entire population. You never say, I want a trans character or a non-binary character. Because, like I said, you cannot crack a door and not expect the wind to blow it open.
I hope that people will maybe, seek out the positive experiences about our play culture in the past as well, because, I think that there's a lot of, as we rightly try to sort of excise the more toxic elements that were present in the past, which I don't think were unique to gaming. I think that they were just the toxic elements of the 80s and the 90s of American culture, right, at large. As we work to excise those, I think we should also work to sort of identify and see what made the communities positive for people and carry that forward, ensure that that sticks around.
Just to every trans gamer and to every non-binary person out there who loves gaming, you belong here, you are welcome here, you are accepted, and the gaming community is better for having you in it. So keep playing, keep standing up for yourself, keep asking people to respect your pronouns, and you're awesome. And everyone deserves to have fun.